Hello there, I'm Ryan, and welcome to Analyze This Mr. Bond, my channel where I discuss the James Bond cultural phenomenon, and today we are talking about the future of that phenomenon. We are talking about Bond 26, one of our favorite topics on this channel. Bond 26 has been in development for a while now, and now we're just about at the moment where the next Bond is about to be cast. We know through the trades that in August, this month, the final round of auditions for our next Bond actor are slated to occur, with director Denis Villeneuve guiding those screen tests. Screen tests have always been an important part of the Bond actor selection, and producer Amy Pascal, who recently dropped a bombshell, said they are mostly trying to follow the playbook, the methodical playbook that Barbara Broccoli and EM Productions used when they were selecting the next James Bond. Amy Pascal went on to say that they expect to announce that actor by end of year. Some had speculated that they might be waiting longer than that, but if you watched my recent video on this subject, my money was always on an October announcement. The reason for that is simple. Denis Villeneuve is going to be bogged down in the press tour for Dune Part 3, which is coming out this December, which means roughly from the back half of November through January up until February of next year, Denis Villeneuve is going to be engaged in press tour activities for Dune Part 3. Amazon, MGM, the producers, Amy Pascal and David Heyman, have to work around that window. And it's highly unlikely they're going to wait until February. If they pick their Bond actor in August or September, that gives a lot of time for that news to leak to the press. No, Amazon, MGM is going to want to take this moment to be the first to announce their selection for the new James Bond. That's why I think it's likely October. If you have the final round of screen tests in August, it's likely you'd have contract negotiations in September, and then you're off to the races with an official announcement in either early or late October, just before Denis Villeneuve gets pulled into the Dune press tour. I'm sure the questions Denis would get asked about the next Bond film would be annoying on the press tour, but he's going to get asked about that Bond film either way. So they might as well lean into it and embrace it. And ultimately, it's beneficial to both movies. Press around Denis Villeneuve doing Bond 26 is also just going to magnify his presence on the press tour and attention on Dune Part 3. So there's no real reason to hide things there. But the question remains, what kind of Bond are we getting? Which actor are we going to get in the next Bond film? There have been a number of reports, and I believe pretty firmly you have to take every Bond actor rumor with a pinch of salt. But there's been enough of a consistent discourse around who Amazon MGM is looking at, and that doesn't seem to have shifted much. The trades have been pretty consistent in indicating that Amazon, MGM, and the producers Amy Pascal and David Heyman are looking at actors in their late 20s, early 30s. That we've had more recent and therefore slightly more credible reports that Tom Francis, the 27-year-old Tony Award winner, got an audition. I think he's a very interesting choice. I know him from his work in the production of Sunset Boulevard. And then we also recently got another report that Harris Dickinson has formally pulled himself out of the running, even though he was one of the top 4 contenders, quote unquote, left to be doing these auditions in August, just because he's so exhausted from his shoot on the Beatles movies that are being worked on by Sam Mendes. Whether we can really take those stories as gospel or not is a open question, but it fits with this broader theme that they're looking for a Jacob Elordi type. Somebody who's a little bit more introspective, a little bit more, not necessarily soft, because these actors definitely have some strength to them, have some body, but they're not the gruff, like strong-jawed, tough guy. I think that makes a little bit of sense. There's a sense in which it seems like the casting is leaning into the sort of stars of now, these sort of figures that Gen Z and Gen Alpha would look up to, which makes sense. This is the Gen Z, Gen Alpha Bond. The millennials effectively got Brosnan and Craig, it makes sense to try to connect with the younger generation. I have a lot of faith that they're not going to just kind of throw everything aside to pander to Gen Z and Gen Alpha, but if you can find a sufficiently intense actor of that age that can carry off the Bond role, it makes sense. And it also aligns with how Denis Villeneuve tends to cast his leading men as well. He doesn't tend to always go for these gruff, manly man types. He does tend to sometimes gravitate towards those figures like Timothy Chalamet, who he cast as Paul Atreides, or Austin Butler, who is also a prominent figure in the Dune movies, Robert Pattinson. There is a sense in which Denis Villeneuve has a certain kind of type that he gravitates towards, and it seems to align with this sort of template that we are seeing in the press. Now, whether it's one of these name actors or whether it is somebody a little bit off the beaten path, I don't know. It could be a Jacob Elordi, it could be a Callum Turner. It's probably going to be someone who is in that sort of space and vein and persona, but not as big. That would be my guess. I still am banking on the idea that we're going to see an unknown. It's always hard to say because if you look at the history of casting Bond, it's generally the case that at any given cycle when they were casting Bond, there was really only one really strong contender in the mix that was close to the finish line, and everybody else was obviously not quite right. It was how you got Roger Moore in Live and Let Die. It was how you got Daniel Craig for Casino Royale. If you look at the casting set there, nobody else really felt like they were going to be able to carry that project. It's not hard to see why Daniel Craig became the producer's favorite there, even though he was the favorite from the outset, just because Henry Cavill, a fan favorite, he didn't have the gravitas in his early 20s to carry what that reboot really needed to do for James Bond. There's that kind of sense that whenever they're casting and doing a wide casting call for Bond actors, there's always like one contender that just kind of sticks out. And I'm pretty sure the audition cycle they're doing will shake that loose for them. That's one thing I took away from Amy Pascal's remarks, that they're doing a methodical search, that they are really trying to approach this as process. And I think whoever's in that room is going to light up that screen or they're not. I don't know that I necessarily can quite see someone like Elordi as James Bond. I don't think he quite has my idea of Bond's humor or panache, but maybe he would surprise me. Any of these contenders would surprise me. Daniel Craig certainly surprised so much of us when he did Casino Royale. But I can see someone in that vein. It's like why someone like Tom Francis, who's a relatively unknown, excites me, because he feels like the kind of choice that could really come out of nowhere and do a really strong job portraying this version of Bond. Even given his age, he has a lot of presence. I thought he was much older when he was doing his performance in Sunset Boulevard. That's my take on it. I wonder how you all are processing that. I think we're probably in for a Bond who's a little bit more internalized, a little bit more intense, maybe like Dalton by way of a current present day runway model, something to that effect, I think is probably where Bond 26 will land. Let me know if you think I'm right about that. I might be completely off base here. I have no more information than anybody else, but it just seems to be what happens when you start to read the tea leaves. Like all of you, I hope to be surprised when we get this announcement, hopefully in October. I just want to be a little bit thrown off by it. I don't want it to be a safe, obvious pick. I don't want it to be someone who I can instantly imagine who their James Bond will be. I want it to be someone who's going to throw me off just a bit, so I really have to work to imagine what their version of this iconic character will be. So thanks for watching, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one.